Welcome back under the big top for more cyborgs and more circuses. Last time, Gwen goes to make up with Aurora after forced conflict number 1. The characters are horny and we get a sex dream, but it's just a dream. The mistress takes out Gwen's chip just to show us that's a thing that can happen and nothing else. Everyone goes to a bar and talks about sex, and our heroes believe everything that they are told. Chapter 14. Let's go. We still, look at, there's only 2 sexy times, and both of them are barely sexy times. There was a hand job in an alley that got interrupted, and a dream. I was promised a smutty book, and this is really disappointing. Everyone's just real horny all the time, but we never actually get to the sex. Kind of makes me wonder if Meg just wanted to write a smut book with just sex, and the backdrop of steampunk, but then maybe somebody influential in her life, not gonna say who, perhaps another author, told her that that wasn't enough and that she needed to have a plot and a death competition and stuff where people would read it. I don't know, but I'm curious. We are back with Gwen. Joy. I wonder why we don't seem to get any POV from Bastian. I kind of, if we're gonna do romantic interests POV, I kind of want all 3 of them. We get another hint that Gwen is working on a secret project. Maybe she's cobbling together a new cyborg hand for Aurora, so Aurora doesn't have to even worry about seducing Gwen. Gwen comes pre-seduced. You don't even have to do any work. So now we're getting to hang out with Bastian. She comes across him reading a book, so that means he's an intellectual, and he's in the garden, and he's been tending this rose bush, even though, nothing grows here, and a single rose blooms, and it's all very romantic. Again, with Bastian, it feels like Meg is rushing, she wants Gwen and Bastian to have known each other for longer, to have had more experiences with each other than they have, because Gwen is oh, he's actually showing affection for something, even if it wasn't a flower, as though she knows that he, never shows affection. But in reality, she doesn't know him well enough. She's only seen him a few times. At least Gwen and Bastian are actually talking about the topic at hand, that being the deadly competition and the fact that they have to, tear people apart. Both of them are upset by that, at least for right now. And in more than just a passing, oh yeah, that's a thing that happened kind of way, like Aurora and her people were, Gwen and Bastian are having an actual conversation about it instead of just mentioning it while they were talking about sex. I kind of see why people like Bastian's character better. I know that he's the preferred love interest, and I can see why. It's because it's not just sex with Gwen and Bastian, and it can get frustrating, especially if you're trying to read a book that has a plot and isn't just about smut. It can get really frustrating reading 2 characters whose whole relationship seems to be, boy, I really want to bang the other person. Anger bubbled in her veins. That sounds like a medical issue. You should probably have somebody look at that. So she's like, Bastian, you need to stop this competition. He called her over to the bench, by the way, and it's not clear why, because she's doing all of the talking and making all the demands. He was like, come here and talk to me, and she's like, okay. And then she's like, you need to stop the competition, and he's like, I can't. And anyway, I won't, because I want the circus to survive, and this is the only way it can, for some reason. I'm sure we're going to find out, or we're meant to infer that, the circus is his only home. It's the most important place to him, so he'll do anything to keep it, even if it means a lot of people have to be killed. Problematic, my guy. But anyway, moving on from that. She's like, okay, fine, if you can't stop it, then get me some books, because the books that I have do not have instructions for safely removing people's implants. And he's like, okay, come with me. Are we gonna have a Beauty and the Beast moment? We already had a rose. And of course, Bastian leads her to his room, but Gwen is still being followed by watchmen, so he has to kiss her, of course.
As a diversion.
So he keeps kissing her while he unlocks the door, and Gwen oscillates hugely between, ooh, I like this, and ick, what is this guy doing? Until finally she just grabs a handful of his balls, and they go into the room. Who's thinking this? Okay, so they go into the room, and it says, the watchmen stood silently in the hallway, unmoving from their posts. And then, in italics, it says, fucking perverts. Who is thinking this? Are we getting the Watchmen's thoughts, thinking that Gwen and Bastian are fucking perverts? Is Gwen thinking that the Watchmen are perverts for watching her kiss this
guy? Who are the perverts in this situation? Because the Watchmen didn't, like, follow them. They're not standing outside a window peeping in. So she takes a moment to look around his room. We get a little paragraph of what the room looks like before she bothers to unhand his package. Like, take your hands off his balls and then look around the room. Priorities. Gwen is having a moment that reminded me of Summer from The Cellar. You know how she used to ask really ridiculous questions in her head when the answer was completely obvious? Like, the bad guy could be murdering someone, and she would be wondering, is he murdering someone? And so Bastian got a rope out of his closet, tied it to a pillar, and threw the end of the rope out the window. And then Gwen wonders, was he about to climb out? No, he just has a hobby. His hobby is throwing ropes out of windows.
Don't talk out loud. You lower the IQ of the whole street.
Gwen is still mad at him for kissing her, and he has to apologize, which is fine, no kiss without consent, but, like, Gwen and Aurora wouldn't ask. I guess the Watchmen maybe are now peeping through the keyhole because she has to make out with him again. Convenient, this time she wants to. And of course, she's immediately aroused because we all know that Gwen exists in a state of, like, horny or almost horny at all times. And even though it's clear that Bastian, like, starves himself and is very skinny, his chest is also broad and well-muscled. He is both. After they finish with their little makeout sesh, which I still don't completely understand why they needed to do it, then they climb out the window. If the guards are watching through the keyhole, then why wouldn't they see them climb out the window? And if they aren't watching, then why did they need to do the little makeout sesh? And also, I'm assuming that there's just, like, no guards down below watching you climb out this window. How high up are they? How visible are they? Like, nothing. Just out the window. Also, this castle where these cyborg circus people live is fucking huge. We have a lot of use of the same words over and over again in this descriptive section. We've got quite a few instances of hallway, and then we also have old and old used one right after another in 2 sentences. Meg has a little bit of a problem with that, and I'm not terribly surprised. It is something that I struggle with as well. My brain kind of latches onto a word, and I use it multiple times in a paragraph or multiple times in a page, and I hope to, you know, get rid of some of that when I go back through and edit, but that's just something to remember and to look out for in all of our writing. Like she says, rather than a few rickety old bulbs illuminating what she'd envisioned to be a dusty old cellar, you could say a dusty cellar or a dusty ancient cellar. Also, I don't know how light bulbs are rickety. That's not something I usually think of as being able to be rickety. And it's a giant library. They've gone onto the basement of the castle, and there's a giant library. If you're in the basement, how do you keep moisture from ruining the books? Who knows, but don't ask questions. And of course, this cyborg circus castle has an enormous 3-story library. That's what she says, 3 stories, in its basement.
Sure, Jan.
They had room for a giant pool full of water to kill cyborgs in, so why not? The dimensions of this building are very TARDIS-esque. It just does whatever you need it to do. It's the castle of requirement. And of course, all of a sudden, Gwen is, like, really into books, even though she clearly wasn't before. It's okay to have your character not like to read. In fact, that's something I like to play with a lot of my characters. I like to make them not bookworms, just because it's such a common trope. I think because a lot of writers are readers, we tend to make our characters readers as well, and sometimes it's fun to just be like, no, this character doesn't like to read. Apparently, Bastian only recently became a member of the management team, which seems odd because he's the ringleader, so one would think he would have been in the management team for a while. But okay. Also, apparently this is the mistress's private library, so be careful you don't fucking get caught down here. So they don't know how the library is organized, so they just pick random shelves and start going through it, which should take roughly the rest of their lives by the description of this library, but I'm sure they'll find something quickly.
Your countrymen never heard of PDFs?
That's the end of that chapter. What a weird chapter, but at least we have characters who kind of care about the situation they're in and are kind of trying to do something about it, even if we had that weird interlude where they had to get makey outy twice. You can definitely tell the side of Meg that just wanted to write just a good old-fashioned smutty book at war with the side of her that believed that she had to have some kind of bigger plot going on, because even when the bigger plot is going on, she keeps reminding us that Gwen is like thinking about Bastian and the smooches they had. As many people have pointed out, Meg would have been better served to just write the smutty, plotless book that was in her heart, and then I would say publish that on a Wattpad. And if it does well there, clean it up and self-publish it. Like, there are options. But that's the end of that chapter, and I will see you again for the next chapter. Hello, it's the same day as last time. If you hear noises in the background, that's my dryer. I'm doing laundry. As usual, I hope you embrace my house noises as though we are both in the same house together. Bastian brought them some food, and Gwen is noticing he's not eating anything because, as we have established, your man has an eating disorder. Gwen has about a page worth of wondering, like, what should she say? Did she want to be friends with Bastian? And then they go back to looking at the books, having really discussed nothing. And Bastian has decided he's done helping her look, and when she looks over at him, he's sitting there reading the book from before, which turns out is a smutty book. We have got a lot of adjectives, which is another sort of novice thing that Meg is doing, and again, you guys know that I believe that using adjectives is completely fine, but we do want to try to find places where they aren't necessary. Places like, he replied smoothly, his gaze growing utterly cold. His gaze growing cold is just as strong, which will leave it you open for adjectives that do make your sentences stronger. And yes, those exist. You can fight me. I don't care what Stephen King says. They have a little scene, a little moment where Gwen is like, ugh, he's so infuriating. And I'm just like, sure, whatever. And of course, Bastian comes crawling back and is like, I'm sorry. He really is very much just sort of doing the Tobias perfect boyfriend thing, where it's like, even though he can be infuriating sometimes, he also hurries to apologize, to be soft, to be good. When she got mad at him, he should have just kept reading his smutty romance book and not come and apologized. This is a great question, Gwen. How had she gotten to the place where the cyborgs had become a sort of family? That is an excellent question, because nowhere in all these pages have we figured out how that happened. You want to boink a few of them. That's the extent of it. Does her eye have a consciousness? She starts to tear up, and it says her cyborg eye whirred in confusion, uncertain what to do with such human emotions. Is her eye, like, alive? Is there an AI inside of her eyeball? I'm very confused by that sentence. And also slightly alarmed. Her eyeball is confused. She has a conversation with Bastian that she had previously had, we're back around to it, where Bastian is like, the good of the many outweigh the needs of the few, or the one, or whatever. So he's like, we have to hurt some performers to save the circus, to save the other performers, and Gwen is like, well, we're hurting a whole fuck ton of them. It's not just like 2 or 3, it's like majority. And he's like, it can't be helped. Also, Bastian mentions that he has more memory of his past than some, which again is convenient, and like also why, I'm forced to ask again, why is the memory thing a thing? After a day and like half the night of looking, Bastian finds a book that has exactly, like not just near what Gwen needs, exactly what Gwen needs. He stumbles upon a book that has instructions for installing a cyborg foot if the previous one was installed incorrectly, which is exactly the problem that Marzana has with her foot. So, very convenient. They couldn't even made it like a hand, and then Gwen could be like, I can figure out how to like make it work. No. Then Gwen is like, when's the next competition? And Bastian's like, I can't tell you for some reason, but then he tells her anyway, so it's like, why was that there? Why wouldn't she know? Gwen's like, oh shoot, Marzana is definitely gonna die because like I left her foot sort of not completed. So if she tries to compete, the unit will overheat and she will get zapped and die. And of course it's almost dawn, so they have to run. It's almost time for the second competition, and that begs the question, like, Gwen thinks that everybody is probably already gathering for the second competition, and why is no one looking for her or Bastian? Because both of them are, like, supposed to be there? Are people going to be suspicious of them, that they were, like, in his quarters, presumably having sex, for, like, a day and most of the night? Wouldn't the guards get a little bit suspicious if they didn't hear a single peep coming from his quarters? They've been down in this library, and they have no concern that they will not be, like, hunted and punished. It's the end of the chapter, though, and the next chapter we get back with Aurora, where maybe she will find out that Gwen was supposedly having marathon sex with Bastian in his quarters. I was given to believe that this book was going to be a lot smuttier, but it's not smutty, it's horny. This is just a horny book. So far anyway, and we're chugging through this thing, so maybe it'll get really sexy in the second half, I don't know. But you'll just have to stay tuned and find out, won't ya? See you next time. Welcome back to my darkened living room. I just crammed a bunch of sweets into my face hole, and I did not wait until I was done chewing to start filming. These are the kind of top-tier choices that we make around here. We're back tonight with more Cyborg Tinkerer. You know, I was thinking about it today, because my job is boring, so I think about the books that I'm reading. And I was thinking about, like, how would I save this book? If it were my book, baby, what would I attempt to do to rescue this? And, like, there's a lot of issues. So I was just like, let's focus in. Let's focus in. It's too big. What about Gwen? Problems with Gwen. She's a little bland, and her motivations are all over the place. One minute she always wanted to be there, the next minute she hates it here and she wants to get away. I need to focus Gwen in. The other problem she's having is that she's formed a family with these cyborgs, and there's absolutely no proof of that, because she's talked with like 3 of them, 2 of which she wants to fuck, and the other one of which is a bully who she hates. So here's how I would change up Gwen. I would have, you know, the beginning part, okay, she's dying. She needs an implant. She gets into the cyborg circus. She doesn't have time to read the fine print because she is actively dying. So when she gets there, yeah, she's a little bit miffed that the fine print does include some questionable things. But she decides to make the best of it. Rather than being like, oh my gosh, I'm so motivated to learn. I've always wanted to become a cyborg tinkerer like she sometimes is in this book. Instead, it's more like, well, I'm here. I have this job now. I have a contract I didn't really have a choice about. Let's make the best of a bad situation. Also, there are hot people here. But rather than have her just be like, I need to find books, I need to learn from books, she could actually be going to the cyborgs in this circus and being like, tell me how to take care of your implants, because you have had this cyborg part longer than I have been a cyborg at all. So please tell me all that you know about taking care of your cyborg parts. Now, she still would probably need to supplement this with books, but this would allow her to get out into the circus and form those relationships that would make this circus feel like a family instead of just being told it feels like one. We could watch her get to know these people and get to know their problems, their struggles, rather than her taking apart Marzana's foot and finding out that it was poorly installed. She could be having a conversation with Marzana about her foot, and Marzana could be like, yeah, it was hastily installed. This is the story of how it was installed. And then Gwen could be like, oh shit, you're right. It does look like it was hastily installed, and I need to figure out how to fix that. Let her have some empathy for these people. Giorgio is doing weird things in the next room. It's fine. Let her have some empathy for these people. Let her hang out with these people. And then we will finally understand why she thinks about them as a family. We will finally understand why she cares if any of them die. I think that would really help Gwen. It would also make her a more humanized character if she has to learn from other people instead of just being like, I can do this on my own. Except for like one other guy who I think is hot. That is my current story notes for Gwen. Let's keep going. Chapter 16. We're back with Aurora. Yes, she has motivations, but they don't make sense. Aurora has a major case of stupid character syndrome where you just wonder, like, how are you okay? Aurora's being threatened out of her bed by a watchman, and it says, the threat was as plain as a black hole. I don't know how plain they are. I wouldn't call them plain or, like, noticeable. Are they particularly? I don't know. I wish Adam was here. He could tell me if that made sense, but he is not, so. Aurora, my sweet summer child. So frustrating when characters are like this. So she realizes that the watchmen have opened her door and come into her room, and only she's supposed to have a key. And she's like, what else has the mistress lied about? Like, you're only becoming suspicious of this woman now? She has put together an elaborate death battle to clearly kill a bunch of you off and take your parts. But you're like, suspicious that she has a key to my room. We're also getting some very heavy-handed clues that the watchmen are something suspicious, which we knew. We knew immediately. They're not normal people, but like they're very well armed and they never like speak up or speak out. They always just do as they're told, and it's like, yeah, I'm still so confused. It seemed like everyone participated in the last competition, but Marzana says, it's my turn. You competed in the last competition to Accio. I actually don't think that Marzana and Accio are in the same like group as Aurora would be. I don't even know if Aurora has a group or if she's like the only acrobat for some reason in this whole circus. Maybe she's like the only slackline performer or something like that, and that means that she is like in her own group. But Accio and Marzana are in their own group, and I don't remember what it is. I have no idea what they do at the circus. Aurora takes a minute as they're being walked down this hallway to their next deadly competition to be briefly horny over Gwen. I'm kind of confused. Apparently, the mistress, if I'm understanding this correctly, is also the keeper of beasts, which I thought that was, I forgot his fucking name, the male love interest. But I guess not. I guess Celeste, the mistress, is also that. But for this test, they have to go and capture the dragon, who we have established is living on this planet somewhere. I can't get over that the city is called Apparatus. I just cannot. This is just such proof that this wanted to be a fantasy book, and for some reason it was shoved into like a sci-fi for just unclear reasons, because it's gone full fantasy. The dragon lives in the cave on the tallest mountain beyond the forest. Form your D&D parties now, everyone.
I cast Fireball.
Dude.
I cast Fireball.
Why?
My memory card's running out of space. Hang on. I gotta go. I'll be back. We'll get to the dragon.
A few moments later.
Okay, memory card replaced. I also put a pizza in the oven, so let's see how fast I can get through this chapter. Also, the ferrets are about to riot because they want to come out of the cage. Let's get through this chapter, alright? We gotta find a dragon. For some reason, the mistress is like, you cannot work together to bring in this dragon. Somebody has to succeed at it. But I don't, like, one person has to do it, personally. I don't know how big these dragons are, but I'm assuming quite large. Like, how would she prove? Is she gonna have cameras following them? How would she prove that they worked together to take down the dragon if one person brings it in? You know, like, and also how does she decide who, like, wins second place or whatever? Is it whoever comes in, like, following the dragon? I don't understand this competition. It doesn't make any sense.
What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules? What are the rules?
It is, however, extremely handy that the dragon's cave on the tallest mountain beyond the forest is less than a day's walk away. So Celeste mentions that if anybody just runs, like if they fucking leave, that the other performers in their group will be terminated. But Aurora doesn't seem to have anyone else in her group, so she could just run. And honestly, people should have run before when they weren't in the middle of the competition. And they should have just run as a group. Okay, so this dragon is more like a manageable size, more like a How to Train Your Dragon 2 lions in length. It's a manageable lizard. Also, if they're killed in the process of trying to get the dragon, that will also get the rest of their team killed, which doesn't make any sense. Like, is it supposed to motivate them not to be killed by a dragon? Because I feel like that's a fine motivator, not wanting to be killed by a dragon. We have a little thought with Aurora about how she's still on this ridiculous mission. She's going to prove herself the best performer. She's going to perform before the Emperor. It's all going to work out. And I'm like, oh, sure, honey. We get the hint that there's other monsters in this area. I wonder if we'll get to see any of them.
Get used to disappointment.
Of course, the timing didn't work out with my pizza, so I've got like a page and a half left, and I'm just gonna get to the end of this chapter because like I have too much stuff to get done tonight. I wanted to get a little bit further. I was hoping to get 2 chapters, but I guess I just have too much to say. So even though they're not supposed to work together to get the dragon, Aurora immediately decides to go make alliances, which I mean is smart, but then in the end you're gonna have to double-cross these people. And that's the end of that chapter, basically. She makes an alliance, they go into the woods, Abercan is strutting around like Gaston. And that's it. So we're going to stop there because, like I said, I have a pizza to eat. I have ferrets rattling the cage bars. So I will catch you for the next chapter. So I just spilled my tea everywhere. How's your night going? Also, I've got a limited time to film because Adam's probably going to be home like any old minute. But I want to get another chapter out of the way in this. And I also was thinking about this again at work, and I was like, okay, we talked about how I would fix Gwen, at least so far. How would I fix Aurora, because you guys know I have a real problem with Aurora. I would make her ambitious like she is, but I would give her an ambition that makes sense. So rather than Aurora wanting to go to impress the Emperor, I want Aurora to want to perform so she can assassinate the Emperor. Forget getting his patronage, forget bowing and scraping to the man who wanted cyborgs eliminated. She's going so she can put a knife to his throat. Or if we don't want her to have goals that are that lofty, she could be something more simple, like she aspires to become the new mistress. So maybe she hasn't got any silly notions of winning the competition so that she can perform before the Emperor. She's more winning it to survive, and she doesn't leave the circus because she wants to take it over. See, the thing with Aurora is you have to give her a good motivation or we don't understand why she doesn't just leave. She has no attachment to the circus aside from a random horniness for Gwen. And she's got a couple of friends there, but they could all leave together. The reason that she stays is because she wants to perform for the Emperor. So we gotta give her a different reason. And if the reason that she stayed was because she was trying to take over, that could work too. Alright, let's get on to chapter 17. By the way, leave your suggestions for how you would fix Aurora and Gwen in the comments below. We'll deal with Bastian in a little bit. We don't know as much about Bastian because he doesn't get a point of view. I do have ideas about Bastian as a character that I would love to see, but I'm going to wait to see if we actually get those from the author. Gwen and Bastian came up from the library. Nobody seems to have worried that they were gone terribly much. It would be interesting if she started to get to know the rest of like the tech crew, but she won't do that because we only really care about the characters that we want to fuck or the characters that are a bully and an antagonist. So Bastian tells her that they are going to go find the dragon. Well, that's a word that Meg definitely made up. Fuck arsery. Not even fuck assery. Fuck arsery. So Bastian wants them to go back to his room via the rope that he has dangling down there that no one has noticed all this time. And Gwen is like, no, I need to get to my workshop and my tools because I need to follow them. And he's like dragging her back. Somehow he's strong enough to do this even though he hasn't eaten in who knows how long. And then she smacks him, she elbows him in the chin, and he's shooketh. Did you just hit me? And I'm like, dude, she grabbed your balls before. Why do you think she wouldn't hit you? Okay, this is... First of all, she and Bastian have a little scuffle because they both know how to fight, obviously. Meg is not very good at action and fight scenes. Again, this is just something that she can get better at with practice. But Gwen goes to punch him, and ow, she hits her hand on something hard, and it's not his rock hard abs. Well, it kind of is. And she looks at him with her cyborg eye for the first time. Her eye is always scanning, is always tracking, is always showing her stuff even when she doesn't want it to. But now, for the first time, she's looking at him and like she has to concentrate to use her mechanical eye. It doesn't make any sense. Meg is breaking up this fight scene. This fight scene is very choppy and again, just poorly written. She's also breaking it up with like Gwen's thoughts. How had he gotten that when she notices that he has her pistol? Like, little things like that break up your fight scene and draw us back out of it. A fight scene is one of those moments where you definitely want your reader fully immersed, and Meg just doesn't have the skill to pull it off. Fortunately, Gwen is really close to him, so she presses a knife to his balls. She's all about threatening his balls, and I don't know how to feel about that. So Gwen is like, why did you let me sign the contract if you knew all of this was going to happen? Which, again, you did not have a lot of time. You were literally passing out in his arms. You couldn't have read the fine print if you wanted to. But anyway, Bastian is like, I didn't know about it until the last minute at the party. Like, somebody gave me a hint, so I tried to warn you. But that's all I knew about it until it was actually happening. Because, of course, Bastian could not be complicit in any way, because he is a good guy, and making him know some stuff and make choices that are a little bit selfish would make him interesting. Whoever's running this circus financially really needs to be have his cyborg parts ripped out of him because he's not doing a good job. Bastian says, the circus didn't have any funds, hasn't for months. That's why you haven't been paid yet. I used every last mark I personally saved up for the past 10 years to pay your bail, in addition to parts of your implant. But it wasn't enough. Like, the circus has no money. Now Bastian has no money. Why is anyone still here? Like, I get it. You feel like a family or whatever. Go be a family who does something that makes money. You know, or he could have gotten a tinkerer that he didn't have to pay the bail for. Like, I get that he was like, okay, she'll be really easy to convince because of these factors, but like, there must have been somebody else he could have gotten. This is a weird jump for Gwen. Not following her train of thought, it seems to have leapt to a different track. Gwen is like, okay, well, Bastian's not in league with the mistress. What has the mistress done to him? You know, he's got this eating disorder. He's got lots of metal parts. And I thought she was naturally coming to the conclusion that the mistress had, like, chopped off bits of him as punishment and replaced them with cyborg parts, which are expensive, so it doesn't completely make sense. But then, instead of saying that, she asks if the mistress raped him. And I'm like, I didn't think that that's where this train of thought was going. So she never asks him what the mistress actually did. Like, she does, and he's like, she did lots of horrible things. And then she thinks about the horrible things the mistress could have done involving, like, his cyborg parts. And instead she's like, did she rape you? And then Bastian's like, no, that's the only thing she hasn't done. And Gwen is like, oh, the poor baby. And then she, like, puts her knife away and gives him a hug instead.
Okay, get over here. Bring it in.
And then she breaks off the hug, and she's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have touched you like that after all you've been through. And I thought she meant, I'm sorry I grabbed your balls earlier and also put a knife to them just now. But no, she meant the hug. She's apologizing for the hug, not the genital harming. And of course he's like, no, it was fine. It was actually really nice. I liked the hug. I assume, unless he liked the threatening with the knife to the balls, I don't know. But now they've decided, yes, we have to go save the other cyborgs, as we are both good people, the heroes. Again, we're pushing a thing that doesn't exist. Just saying something in your book over and over again doesn't make it real. I have to protect the cyborgs. I won't let some bully like Celeste fuck with my new family. I've talked about this before, how a lot of times in my books, when I'm either editing myself or if I'm looking at someone else's book, and I come to a place where I'm being told something, I like to say, prove it. To myself, to whoever's book I'm reading, prove it. And if I can't prove it, and if the book can't prove it, then it's not doing a good job of showing rather than telling. This telling is not substantiated by anything. The book has not proved it. And we are substantially into the book. The book has had time. Alternately, Gwen doesn't have to feel like the cyborgs are her fucking family right now, if that doesn't make any sense for where she is as a person. She could still want to go after them because she's nice and because she knows that Marzana's foot is going to kill her, and like, she doesn't hate Marzana. We don't have to have this whole thing where she's like, but the cyborgs are my family. I think a good rule of thumb is if you find yourself having to say something all the time in your book, you're probably not proving it terribly well. Like, if you have to have your character constantly thinking, that's my family, my new family, oh, I love them like a family, you're probably not showing it well. We should be able to feel that your characters feel that way about each other without ever being told. Now, you can bring it up at some point, especially in a moment where the character makes a realization like, oh shoot, these are my family, but you want to limit it and you want to let us feel it. And that really applies to anything. If you find yourself telling your reader a lot of times, oh, my main character has such a temper, and you keep being like, her temper that always flared up, she always had such a temper, but you're not showing it, you need to go back through and rework. Bastian leaves her in his bedroom, and then he goes away for like an hour and comes back with medieval weaponry. I don't understand the technology of this world. Their medical technology is confusing. They have guns, but he brought back swords? Is it because we're going to go fight a dragon? And again, why isn't this a fantasy book? Oh, so Gwen can have her skimmer. She goes and gets her flying skateboard, which we had kind of forgotten about until now. You know, you can have that with magic. It can fly with magic instead of whatever the fucking technology is supposed to make it fly in this world. We're never going to get that explained, so it might as well be fucking magic. Just make this a fantasy book. Also, they're running all over the castle and no one is stopping them or yelling at them or anything. Like, Bastian's able to go get swords and shields. Gwen's able to go get her skimmer. No one asks questions. Apparently the skimmer can hold both of them. Don't ask questions. They have to stop in camp for some reason, even though it should be the morning. And I thought were we told that the dragon was a day and a half away? Or like a day away? Like, it was really close by. And I didn't think people were going to have to camp overnight, but maybe they are. But apparently, just getting to the forest, they get to the edge of the forest and they decide to camp. So, like, distance is also not something that we should trouble ourselves with. But then they find a stream and get some water, and she's like, I hope this water doesn't poison us. And it's like, you don't have like any kind of purification tablet that you could handily just mention. Like, you have the power to make up anything in this world, and you still having your characters worry about whether they can drink from the stream. Bastian is sharing more memories of when he joined the circus, which brings up the question, why do we have the fucking memory wipe thing? I don't care what kind of twist you need to bring up later that involves the memory wipe. We can find a way around it. This memory wipe thing is not working. The old ringleader is named Carlisle, and isn't that the name of, like, the head vampire in Twilight? Like, the one who is, like, the head of the family. I don't know. I haven't read Twilight, but I seem to remember that name. Long story short, with Bastian, he used to belong to a rich family, but they were also criminals, probably in the mob or something. He refused to partake in the criminal activities, but they were like, no, you gotta. And so he did. But then he turned himself in, and they were going to hang him when Carlisle, not a vampire, came and saved him and brought him to the circus. You're not gonna give it some sort of cool cyborg name? So she asks, like, what was his medical issue? His heart was bad, and he needed a pacemaker, which is something that we have, like, give it a cool cyborg name. Like, I needed some kind of cool cyborgy implant, I don't know, I don't write steampunk, to keep my heart going. You know, make it sound cool, not like, I needed a pacemaker. We also learn that when he first joined, they were trying to figure out how to incorporate animals more, and so he apprenticed to Celeste, and they were trying to turn animals into cyborgs. Like, not even injured animals or anything. They're just trying to turn animals into cyborgs, which is a whole ethical issue in and of itself. But then they realized that the cyborg implants weren't taking with the animals, which, what does that mean? Did the animals just die? Like, what horrible thing happened to these creatures? But then he realized that anesthesia made it impossible for the cyborg implants to take. So they had to have them lightly under anesthesia, and they'd often come awake and then try to maul the people who were doing the surgery, which I feel is a completely fair reaction, and I am on the side of these animals. We already know that use of animals in circuses has been severely limited and rolled back because we have figured out that it is cruel and we should not do that anymore. Especially animals like elephants, big cats, that kind of thing. I can't imagine the level of inhumane treatment that cyborg animals are getting. You guys know how I feel about animals being mistreated. I have a very low tolerance for it, and I just want to kick all these characters' asses now. But as the animals were trying to, rightfully, as they should, maul the people that were trying to mutilate them, they mauled Bastian many times, and that's why he now has, like, lots of metal plating all over him. You'd think he would have learned after the first couple of times being mauled that maybe what they were doing was, I don't know, wrong? But no, he did not learn. He just kept replacing with more metal parts. It's sort of like the Tin Man, you know, the original story of the Tin Man, where he kept just, like, chopping limbs off himself and just replacing them with metal until it was all metal. Except for original Tin Man didn't mutilate any innocent animals in the process.
If I only had a heart.
So she and Bastian have a moment that's barely earned. It's earned better than anything else has been earned in this book, but it's barely earned, where she's like, Bastian's like, I don't have anywhere else to go, the circus is all that I have, and then Gwen is like, you have me, we're kind of friends now. We have seen her actively interacting with Bastian and learning things about him and coming to understand him, even if it is awkward and weird, and she grabs his balls way too often, but... And then they fall asleep, and of course, even though she is sleeping on the ground in the woods, hunting a dragon, what she dreams about is a threesome with Bastian and Aurora. We know Gwen's priorities are first, foremost, and always about sex. And that's where I'm going to leave you for tonight. I'm getting really close to the place where I would feel comfortable starting to publish these, so I'm excited. Hopefully this is interesting enough that people are actually going to want to watch these. My best ones are always Jenna's because her books have enough plot to really riff off of, and this one is struggling so much, so we'll see what we get. Once I add some fun clips and stuff like that, we'll see what we get. I'll see you for the next chapter.
You're in my world now, not your world. And I got friends on the other side. He's got friends on the other side.
Friends like My 96, Afra, Melissa, AC, Swamp Goblin Waifu, Sophia, Merween, Kit, Hidden Glade, Light Julie, Belle, and Sophie, Ray, Shelby, Zaire, Jesper, Irene, Scribbling Cat, Savvy, Jenny, Amanda, Lisa, Sarah, and Lennox. Whew, I have so many friends I'm gonna run out of room on the other side.